Kia ora mai koutou. Ngā uri o ngā hapu katoa o te Whakatohea. Ngā mihi nui I tēnei tauhou. No reira, ngā mihi, ngā mihi, ngā mihi. Kia ora everybody, this is Tuariki Delamere, Ngati Patamoana. As many of you are aware, I had a meeting with the Whakatohea Pre-Settlement Claims Trust on Sunday the 17th. That was held at the Whakatohea Māori Trust Board in the Portiki. The purpose of the meeting was to have a roundtable discussion as to my reasons, my thoughts surrounding the treaty claim that myself and Te Ringahuia Hata put forward. What I made clear to the trust, and it was sort of co-chaired, if you like, by Robert Edwards, the chairman of Whakatohea Māori Trust Board, and Graham Ristra, who I understand Graham's the chair of the Pre-Settlement Claims Trust, and a number of the other trustees and some observers were there. What I told them is that I am not opposed in principle to them being the mandated body to represent the Whakatohea in the settlement of our historical claims. But I told them that whether they like it or not, they don't have the mandate to go forward at this stage. Because again, whether they like it or not, 13 separate claimant groups of Whakatohea filed an urgent hearing 2 or 3 years ago about the mandate, and the tribunal, the Waitangi Tribunal, ruled that the Whakatohea Pre-Settlement Claims Trust did not have a proper mandate, and the Crown was way out of line and quite objectionable in deciding they would only recognise the Pre-Settlement Claims Trust. Now, what I told them at the meeting, I acknowledge they've gone around the motu and had various meetings, but in my opinion, that is not sufficient. And certainly the 13 claimant groups, is my understanding, that is not their position either. I told them, if you want to go forward with a proper mandate, you need to sit down with each of those trusts individually, or invite them anyway, and work through their issues. You may or may not settle any of them, but you need to go through the process. And you know, the process isn't going to Tāmaki, coming out to Glen Eden and having a 2-hour hui with everyone and sundry there, and maybe someone gets appointed or not. That's just not how you do it. You have to sit down with each one individually, invite them. If they don't accept, well, they don't accept, but at least you can then go back to the tribunal and report that you tried. I told them you need to record those. And when you do have a meeting, like you did when I sat with them, record it. You've got the video equipment there, so you have a true record. Summarize it and go through all of them. The issues you can sort out, that's great. If you can't, hey, you can't. But then you can go back to the tribunal and say, we have negotiated in good faith with all 13, or the ones who agreed to front. And then you have, I think, you hold a weekend hui somewhere within Whakatohea, whether it's Te Rere or Oumaramutu or Waiowa, wherever. You have a hui a iwi, preferably chaired by someone who's independent, and report back to the iwi, and then allow free discussions. At that stage, then I believe, and I think that's what I told the trust on Sunday, then you go back to the tribunal and the Crown and say, we now want to have a new voting process. And why a new voting process? Because as I told the trustees, the previous one was a bucket of worms, totally invalid. Now, it was never set up to be like that, but people screwed up. The recommended questions in the tribunal report for the mandate claims or mandate claim for the voting process was not carried out. Someone screwed up the wording, and from then on, when that voting process came out, it was totally invalid. And trying to manipulate the figures to claim some sort of mandate just doesn't wash. If it went to the High Court would laugh it out of court. So who was at fault? Pretty well everybody. The Waitangi Tribunal itself was at fault. But I've had lawyers tell me, oh, no, we can't say that to tribunal, they'll get angry. Well, I don't give a shit if they get angry, they screwed up. Someone should have noticed the wording was wrong. The retired Justice Reese Harrison, what the hell was he doing? He's a High Court Justice, or was. He's just along for the ride, enjoying sitting back and being the great big poobah, going to all the maraes and getting a Māori cultural experience. He didn't pick it up either. The Crown, Te Arawhiti, they didn't pick it up. The Pre-Settlement Claims Trust, including the lawyer Jason Poe from Ngāpui, he didn't pick it up. Now, none of this was deliberate, but at the end of the day, the voting paper that was sent to us was nonsensical. It didn't make sense. The voting process, therefore, was totally invalid. And I think the Claims Trust on Sunday agreed with what I was saying. As I said, it's not anyone's fault. It just happened. Okay, let's deal with it and move on. So go back to the tribunal, go back to the Crown and get them to fund a new voting process, but only after the Claims Trust has gone through with the 13 individual claimants. Now, I don't support any of those claimants. I don't oppose any of those claimants. I've not involved, never been involved, don't want to be involved in their individual claims, but they have the right to be heard. And the whole thing is like people getting their noses out of joint. How dare they go to tribunal and say and oppose them? I mean, even my claim is all about doing the process properly. But I've received comments from people who should know better saying rather unfortunate things, but never mind. People have said worse about me in the past. But we've got to get it right, because if we don't, all we're doing is enriching the dozens of bloody lawyers that are involved at the moment with Whakatohea, not just on this claim, but also with the marine resources, etc. And we, Māori, the uri of the Whakatohea, are the ones missing out all the time. So just accept that what happened in the past was cocked up, and let's go back and start it over again. And listen to those claimants, you know. If you don't agree with them, fine, but record what you tried to do and go back to the tribunal, and they will decide if things have been done well enough, and then go to the people. You know, we want to settle. I want to settle. You know, 1996, 25 years ago, when I led the claim as the project manager or director, whatever, to Whakiriora Williams, it fell over. And in hindsight, probably a good thing it fell over, because the other thing I mentioned to the trust, back then, we had no structures in place that could have handled $42 million. We would have lost it by now, probably. And that's the danger right now. As I told Robert Edwards, chairman of Whakatohea, the Māori Trust Board, and Graham and the others there, perhaps we need to focus on what are we actually going to do if we get 100 million or whatever. You know, let's get structures in place. We've got a lot of talent in Whakatohea. You know, we've got accountants, lawyers, engineers, the whole bit. Let's utilize those talents and put together a structure. You don't want people, oh, that's our komatua, that's our kuia, that's our karaua, oh, that's kind uncle so-and-so. That's all good. But we actually need people who have the ability, who have the talent. I mean, if you look at the example of Tainui and Naitahu, Tiffany Regan got slammed by his own back in 1994 when he put in place accountability, transparency structures. Oh, you're just using the Pākehā bloody systems. He says, no, I'm using the system that the Pākehās use because they work. And look at Ngāi Tahu today, they're worth about $4 billion. Nothing happens in the South Island to Waiponamu without their say-so. And that should be happening in the Pōtiki. Nothing should happen in the Pōtiki without the blessing and agreement of the Whakatohea. But that will never happen if we don't sort ourselves out and get a proper structure in place. Tainui did it the Māori way. Yeah, let's buy a pub in Sydney. Oh yeah, let's spend $1 million and get a box at the Warriors games. And they almost lost everything. Thank goodness common sense and wiser heads prevailed, and they got some skilled people, and they have to be Pākehās mostly. But today they're charging ahead, and good on them. We don't need to go down the original Tainui path. We need to take the path of Ngāi Tahu and have our structures in place, ready to rumble, ready to go. So if the people don't have the skills, don't have the experience, I don't want them anywhere near managing the resources and assets that will come to us in the future. So really, that's about it. Oh, a couple of things I did say to them. I know they've got a pre-offer of $100 million from the Crown. I says, yeah, well, that's not really that much. I know it's more than the 42 million that myself, two Williams and the late Karori Edwards negotiated, but if we put that in a managed fund way back then, it's probably worth 200-300 million, but it's not the dollar amount. It's have a principle. We need to put in place a starting point. And I gave them examples, or 3 examples actually. In 1996, when I became a cabinet minister, the first item on the docket was the Whakatohea. I had to recuse myself because obviously I had a rather massive conflict of interest. The second item on the docket was Equity Corp. And Equity Corp, that was, what's his name, Keith Hawkins or whatever his name was, Alan Hawkins, went to jail, I think. Anyway, it's about the money the investors lost, you know, nearly all Pākehās. Our cabinet that I was part of, we felt sorry for them and we coughed up, I think, nearly $300 million to them. Well, why do Pākehās, when they knowingly, willingly put in $300 million and they lose it because of they chose the wrong horse, how come they get fully reimbursed? Where's the sensibility and morality of that compared to what happened to Whakatohea? And then look at South British Finance, you know, down the, or South Canterbury Finance, sorry, not South British, South Canterbury Finance. I think we bailed those investors and nearly all Pākehā, something like $1.2, $1.5 billion. Oh, poor bastards, you know, they trusted that guy and he screwed them over. So let the taxpayer, Māori Pākehā, let's pay those poor rich guys out who invested their monies. And fine, but if they're going to be treated like that, why not us? What was the value of what the Crown did to us? Anyway, the example I said we should start off is, I reckon, look, the Orchestra of New Zealand, Symphony Orchestra, is, I believe, this century alone, from the year 2000, they have received somewhere between $200 and $250 million from the taxpayers' purse. I think the Whakatohea is worth at least as much as the orchestra. So that's what we want. Starting point, $250 million. You know, and so Graham was a bit surprised. Graham Brewster says, oh, but the Crown's already, you know, told us 100 million. I don't give a shit, you know, put our stake in the ground. We might end up being forced to accept 100, I don't know. But why our negotiators have already agreed to go to their end of the field with $100 million at this stage, with 25 years of collective negotiation experience among Māori, why the hell are we still going down to their end of the field and starting off with what they offer? We want X dollars. I'm saying at least 250 million, given what they did to us, murdering our ancestors, women and children, and the only cavalry charge ever to take place in this country, the theft of all our lands, the cultural loss, etc., etc. 250 million is pretty cheap. And you know they got it. I mean, How much have the government paid out without any research or whatever in 2020 because of COVID? Now, I'm not opposed to what they did, but hey, when it one gets the impression if it's park here, oh shit, we got lots of money. So anyway, I won't be opposing the negotiating committee, whichever shape it is, or what construction, who's on it, to whatever amount they settle on. I mean, if they want to go 100, that's fine, I'll accept it, but I reckon we're starting pretty bloody low, okay? The other thing I resent about the dollar amount, I saw that, the $100 million, that's okay, if it's 100, it's 100. But that's our 100 million. It's not for the Crown to put into our settlement how we spend it. I really object to, I think it's $5 million earmarked for te reo revitalization. If we want to do that, that's fine, but the Crown's insisting we should do it, piss off. That's out of today's taxes, it's part of the education budget. So why should we be paying that? And we're contributing to the management, was it $5 million again to the reserve lands, which they won't give back to us. But why are we paying that? That should all be out of the Crown. And in fact, part of our starting point should be the return of every square centimetre of land currently owned by the Crown, including reserve lands. That's what we want. That's our starting position. Now, I know they'll oppose it, a whole bunch of people get all upset. You can't give that back to the Māori. Well, why not? You stole the bloody stuff. Give it back. But what I want, we put it in writing, we want it back. And that will force the Crown to explain why we can't have back what you stole from us. Because some of you older ones who were around at the fiscal envelope hui in 1993 that I oversaw and supervised, managed, whatever, is where I dreamt up the stolen car analogy. And I forget who I had to give it. But anyway, it went something like this. 1920, my grandfather stole this beautiful Buick and passed it down to my dad, passed it down to me. But then 60 years later, the cops turn up at my doorstep and say, you got a stolen Buick from 60 years ago, bro. The way I got it from my father. You never told me it was stolen. Oh, don't care. It was stolen by your grandfather. Well, I never met my grandfather. Waitangi died before I was born. But anyway, the point of that story is stolen property, when it's found, is taken back by the authorities. It's then returned to the owner. So, well, look, I found our reserve lands. They're up the back of a Tuariki. Just give them back. What I want to know is, I'm sure they won't, and we can't force the government, obviously, to do it. But I want to put it in writing and explain to us why we can't have our stolen property back. And the final point is on the settlement. One thing that annoyed me is when I saw this map of our mana moana, the starting point at Ohiwa, the western end. We argue with Ngāti Awa over where, but we start from the western end there, down to as close to Tore as we can get. That's the starting point. The map that the Crown and our negotiating committee came up with went like that, Ohiwa, Tore, out to Whakari. Oh, hold on, what are you talking about? Ohiwa, Tore, fine. I want us to go out 200 miles to the international zone that we as a country claim. All of that inside is ours. Again, will we get it? Don't know. Probably not. But if you don't ask for it, you sure as hell won't get it. I don't want us to be pigeonholed into a triangle out the Whakari. And so we should put our starting points where we believe the morality lies. Okay? Anyway, I'm looking forward to hearing back from Graham and his negotiating committee, see what they intend doing next. As I said, I hope they do approach every one of those 13 claimants. Graham says they're very keen to meet with each one of them, each one of you guys. So if you're one of those 13 claimants, get hold of Graham, get hold of Robert Edwards, and go in and see them. Just and sit around and talk about it. Put your points on the table. If you can resolve them, that's fantastic. If you can't, hey, at least you've tried. And then we can have the huia iwi, and then hopefully a new voting process in a few months' time. Anyway, everybody, mihi nui mo te tauhou. Hope you're all safe and well. And till next time, take care.